This is going to sound really macabre, but I travel a lot, mostly by
That doesn't
myself.
sound macabre.
Not that far yet. When I get on a plane, I send out 2 messages. I don't make the assumption that the plane's going to land. That's the macabre part.
I'm in the City of Angels, gathering up some interesting ingredients for dinner with Emmy Award-winning designer and serial entrepreneur Chris Do.
The past is memory and the future is imagination. You just have this moment.
Chris is a deep thinker, closet stoic, and someone who sees life through the lens of design. This is Last Meal, where I prepare the dish my guest would want if it were their last.
My name is Chris Do. I'm a loud introvert. I'm a serial entrepreneur, middle child, and above average student, but a first-class troublemaker. And I had this really big mission, which is to teach a billion people how to make a living doing what they love.
Amazing. And you're doing that right now.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. With The Futur.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the company a little bit.
Yeah, so in 2014, a former college classmate of mine, Jose Caballé, invited me to make YouTube content with him, something that was really far away from my mind. Because at that time, I was running a production company, making commercials and music videos. And the idea of just getting on YouTube and exposing myself, telling our story, seemed like such a foreign concept. I was very reluctant to do that, but he's a very persistent and persuasive person. So ultimately I said yes. I did it, and choosing to go onto YouTube changed the course of my life and my career, and it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. I'm an introvert. I'm socially awkward. I don't like to go out, but what I want to do is leverage media, particularly social media, so that I have a much bigger presence so that we don't let the extroverts have all the fun.
Yeah. And now I don't have to go for coffee with anyone. That's
Yeah.
Let's get on to your last meal, because it was a very interesting one for multiple reasons.
Okay.
Your last meal is...
Oh, wow. That looks scrumptious.
wakame salad.
Mm.
So there's a couple of things about this salad that I think are interesting. The first being that it's a very fresh meal, and that seems to be like something that you really appreciate. You seem to look after yourself health-wise.
Uh-huh.
And I think it represents you in the way also that I tried my best to make the presentation nice, adding a few flowers and things like that. You are a lover of contrast, and you're a lover of beauty.
Yeah. If you pick really great ingredients and you prepare it well, the balance of color, texture, and flavors really come together. And so I'm a fan of Japanese cuisine because of the aesthetic nature of it, the amount of care and thought and intentionality between the ingredients and how it's presented. So here I see your bowl. It's like, it's got a lot of colors and textures. And despite people who might not be like big fans of salads, this I can imagine would be a really tasty salad, one that you don't feel like it's a compromise, but something you look forward to.
Tell me about the importance of contrast to you.
Well, contrast is king. Like when people would say content is king, well, maybe then contrast would be queen to the king. Oftentimes people make content online and they just say what everybody else is saying. So why would anyone pay attention to you? So you have to be able to say something new or say something familiar, but in new ways for people to pay attention. It's also true in design. Something I learned many years ago in design school from typography. Big things like small things, and things that are heavily textured like things that are smooth. Rectilinear versus curvilinear. Photos versus illustration. Density and negative space. So when you look at that and you understand that, you can apply it to almost everything.
Whether we aim to or not, we all sort of judge things based on what we see, the design of something, and also how we put ourselves together, how we present ourselves, what we wear. And do you think that that bestows a particular responsibility on all of us to project a particular image, whatever it is we want to convey?
Here's a classic example. If you look at packaging, and I think that this is going to hopefully turn on some light bulbs for folks. So when you go to a store, whether it's a candy bar, a window washing fluid, or anything else, you're making a lot of probably subconscious decisions about what is high quality, what is good for the environment, what is going to be better for your skin, what's all natural. And so you're going to look at all those things and you're going to make a decision. And so in the hands of really thoughtful designers, they consider all those things in these cues that they put into it. So if something is meant to be like all natural, you're not going to want to use super ultra bright saturated colors because it doesn't feel natural to us. And when we show up in the world, we're also making decisions about how we want to present ourselves and the package. I mean, it's kind of funny because if a girlfriend tells her friends, I met the perfect guy, what do they say? He's the total package. And it's kind of interesting how we use that language, and I draw parallels to the world of design and packaging. So the total packages, they've got everything.
You didn't always think like this, though, right? I mean, you weren't always design-minded, or were you from a young age?
It took me a while to figure out what it is I was supposed to be in life. But if you look back, all the clues were there. Because back then, and maybe it's still true to this day, boys tend to be like into sports and cars and certain kinds of things that allure young men. But for me, I was more interested in wallpapers, interior design, graphic symbols. And when I would go out, the story I like to tell folks is I was always kind of mesmerized by Ivy League schools because they had these old looking crests. Later on, I find out the term for is heraldry, and I just love the emblem. So when we would go by, I would ask my mom to buy me like the Princeton sweatshirt. And it made my parents really happy because most Asian American immigrants think it would be great if you got into Princeton. I didn't know about Princeton. I didn't care about Princeton, but I liked the shield.
Yeah, you wanted the logo.
I wanted the logo. So it's all there.
You seem to have found the intersection between something that you're really good at and something that you really love.
Yes. For a long time after I studied design, I would always introduce myself as a graphic designer. I'm a graphic designer. I'm a graphic designer. That became my identity. But over time, I start to realize how limiting it is to describe yourself as a graphic designer. But I'm working with people, helping them with mindset or sales, or I'm designing a space for someone to move through to create a user experience. I'm no longer a graphic designer, so I struggle with this identity. So underneath all of that is probably my first real identity, which I didn't know, which is I love to teach. I love to be around people and to make kind of ideas explode in people's minds, to challenge their thinking, to disrupt certain patterns of beliefs, and hopefully show them a different way. After I've graduated school, I'm running my design company. And then a few years later, I'm teaching, but these seem like very different worlds. I can borrow from one for the other, but they live in separate universes. And when my friend Jose enters my life, I start to see the union between these two, and the overlap isn't a slim sliver, it's actually massive. So I get to now teach, bring visual aesthetics and design principles into it, plus the 20 plus years of practical business experience, and to bring all of me into that. So I describe to people like this idea of the unified self versus the fragmented self. So when we're living parts of ourselves, we're very fragmented, just parts of us show up in the world, and it can feel like empty. But when we bring those fragmented parts together and we present ourselves as a whole, I think the unified self is very interesting. And this is why I feel like I have infinite energy to continue to do this for as long as my body will hold up.
What would you say has been the most defining moment of your life?
I think there's a couple ways I can answer this question, but I want to tell you that 5 years out of school, something weird happened to me. I started to feel burnt out. At this point in my career, I had hired young designers working for me, and I felt like they knew more than me. So I was starting to feel very self-conscious and insecure with my own design skills. And it just so happened that I was planning to take a sabbatical. I was kind of burnt out. I'd been working for 5 years straight, no holidays, nothing, even postponed my own honeymoon.
Wow.
Right? So I was just been working nonstop like a dog. And the coincidence was I was invited to teach at Otis. It's like, maybe this is a sign from the universe. Let me go and teach. I'm going to take a 3-month sabbatical. Anyways, it worked out. I go to school. I'm scared out of my mind. I'm teaching things that no one has taught me. And my students really challenged me. But the really cool thing is they started to ask me questions, and I didn't know I had the answers already inside. So there's this expression that I love: when one teaches, two learn. And why teachers say my students have taught me more than I could ever imagine teaching them is because you learn so much about yourself. And from that point forward, I never second guessed myself again. My confidence was now super rock solid because no one can take that away from me. Like, I'm a teacher. I'm pretty freaking good at it. I'm extremely passionate, and I work really hard at becoming the best teacher I can be.
You think you're in that moment in your life that you will look back on and say, this was my prime?
100%. And a lot of amazing things are happening for me right now. And I'm not even sure I'm in my prime. I still believe at 52, my best years are ahead of me. The thing that matters the most to me is that my two children, two boys, are 18 and 20 years old, that they find what they're meant to do in their lives, and that I've given them as much guidance, tools, and resources so that they live a meaningful, fulfilled life. Not necessarily a long life, but just so that they find their deepest core passion and that they feel great joy in being able to do that. So weird thing is, I know it's strange because I describe my wife and I as very non-conventional parents. I've tried to offer both my boys money not to go to school. So when they were pregnant, my wife and I did a very responsible adult thing. We put money away for their tuition for 18 years. And so there's plenty of money. And I say to them, that money is yours. It's not, I'm not holding it over you to try to control you. I would love for you to experience the world, go live anywhere you want, study under anybody, don't study, start your own business, do whatever you want to do, because you don't have to go any path that was preordained to you by anyone else other than yourself. Just follow your heart and you'll be okay. Strangely, both children have refused to take this offer and they continue to go to school, which is fine by me too. But I would feel like,
Is it a reverse psychology in a way?
no, not really. It's
No, I'm
really
only joking.
genuine, right? What I care about is, are you happy? Are you doing what you're doing? And am I challenging you to go a little bit beyond your comfort zone?
There was one question I didn't really get to ask you about the last meal, which was that my guess is that you would want to have it surrounded by friends and family.
Like literally, if this was my last day on earth and the meal was prepared, like, I'm very utilitarian. So what is the point of me eating if I'm going to die? And I like food, but I don't love food that much. It would be more important for me to like communicate to the people that I care the most, that I love them and that I want them to continue on and live a joyful, fulfilled life. And that's really important to me. This is going to sound really macabre, but I travel a lot, mostly by
Doesn't
myself.
sound macabre.
Not that part yet, right? And when I get on a plane, I don't make the assumption that the plane's going to land. That's the macabre part,
That's cool.
right?
I love
I
that.
don't make that assumption.
Yeah.
So I send out two messages, basically. And it's just become a habit now.
Yeah.
I text my mom, say, Mom, I'm on a plane. I'm going to wherever I'm going. I love you. And that's it. And she sends me a little note back. Not a long thing. I send a note to my wife and to the kids. I love you guys. Please take care of yourselves. Because I keep thinking, if the plane were to blow up or crash into the ocean or wherever, I want the last message to them from me is one of love, unconditional love. And that's it. And I've even told my wife, should I pass away, here's what you need to do. And there's a very specific plan. And the first thing I say, do not shed one tear. Because if I have an afterlife, the worst thing that I could feel is for you all to be sad. Just get on with your lives. It'll be okay.
That's a really fantastic thing to do. I'm going to start doing it now as well. Speaking of afterlife, do you believe in an afterlife?
I grew up Catholic, and I think I'm more an atheist today.
Okay.
Not sure. And I think I just turned to dust and the cycle of life begins again. The danger of thinking you have infinite life or you're reincarnated or something beyond is you don't take advantage of the life that you have right now. And I want to be as much as possible fully present in the moment, living my best life, because as far as we know right now, there is no evidence that there's anything else. So I'm going to go with that to make sure that this moment, this conversation, I'm as present as I can be.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. One thing that I did pick up on, though, over the years of watching some of your content is that although you may not be strictly religious, you do seem to be guided by a few philosophies, many of which border on Stoicism, I
Yes.
would think,
Yes.
sometimes. Can you talk a bit about that? Is that something that you engage in a lot?
So most of my young adult life, my mouth was shut. I was just listening and observing. And so I think the fidelity of the recording of my life and the observation was very high because I never felt compelled to speak. And so I started to observe my own thoughts. And later on, I'm in college. I meet this guy. He's from Sweden, and we're having this conversation. And he goes, Chris, most people don't think about what they say. Some people think about what they say, and almost no one thinks about what they think about. And when he said that, it hit me. I'm like, I think about what I think about a lot. And later on, I start to understand the whole concept of meditation and being stoic. it's not to suppress all of your emotions. It's to be able to witness and observe your own emotions and feelings and decide what works for you. And I think that's such a beautiful philosophy. And growing up, one of my heroes, and I told my therapist this, and he goes, "That's so sad that that's your hero," is Mr. Spock.
Okay, this is Star Trek, is it?
Star Trek.
Okay.
Yes. And so for me, growing up watching that series, I think it's from the 70s, that there's Captain Kirk, the flamboyant, swashbuckling guy who like is a star, charismatic, makes wild decisions based on his emotions, was the one who was the hero. Mr. Spock was like this super stoic person because the Vulcans have evolved to suppress or remove their emotions. And so they're high intellect or high achieving. They can do pretty much anything. They're superhumans. That's what I want to be. And so that's my role model, is to be Mr. Spock. And there's this great line that he says, I think in the end of Star Trek 2, spoiler alert, I mean, it's been decades, so.
Oh, that's not,
Right.
you don't have to.
Okay,
yeah.
so he sacrifices himself. And in the last scene, when Kirk is looking at him through the glass, because he's like full of radiation, he goes, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one or the few. And it was just like, it broke my heart. It's like, Spock is doing everything for others and not for himself, and he's doing exactly the right thing. And I wish more people thought like that, to think of others before themselves, because the world would be a much better place.
That's really interesting. Do you believe in pure altruism?
Oh, well, I'll tell you my philosophy on this. I would rather people hurt me than for me to hurt people. That I would be okay if someone took advantage of me, but I would not be okay if I took advantage of someone.
You've accrued a lot of wisdom such as this over the course of your career. But is there one lesson that, had you learnt it very early, would have changed the trajectory of your life for the better?
I think so. The one thing that I always tell people today is I started making content when I was 42 years old. So I've been at the content game for 10 years. And I think it's been the most impactful thing in my business life that has led to the greatest amount of growth for me. What would I be like if I was 20 years into this, or 30 years? So I was thinking, man, I should have started when I was 32 or maybe 22. I would be a totally different person today.
So it's basically start early.
Yeah, start early.
And do you think that goes for everything?
Well, for this thing in particular,
Yeah.
as a shy, introverted kid, I don't want to be in the spotlight. In fact, being in a spotlight makes me sweat. It makes me like breathe irregularly, and it's something I've had to work through. I remember in the early days of public speaking, my breath would be so irregular that I would be like burping while I'm talking, because I don't think I'm hyperventilating, but something is really weird. And I could not eat before I spoke because it would run right through my body. Like the last thing you want is 15 minutes before go time, you're on the toilet trying to excise a demon out of you. And it's like, this ain't good. It's because there's so much like acid and indigestion that's going on. So I couldn't eat. Now it's like, you do whatever. It's fine.
In my life, I think my idea and answer to that question, that thus far at least, is that that lesson that nobody really cares about your life as much as you do. And all of that self-consciousness about, I will be judged for this, that, or the other. Nobody's really even paying attention at the end of the day. So just start, as you were saying. Is there a belief that you hold that most people don't agree with?
Yes. I'm going to say this and people are going to be shocked. There's two ideas. Okay. First, with a story. My wife was talking to me about our son doing something really good. And this is when he's much younger. I'm like, oh yeah, that's just like the way I do things. She looks at me, because she does all the parenting, raising of the children. And she goes, my God, is everything always about you? You just love yourself so much, don't you? And she said this to me to cut me down.
Yeah.
Right. And I paused and I was like, yes, you're right. I do love myself a lot. And I asked her this question: would you love me if I didn't love myself? Would you feel burdened to fill me up with love so that my insecure self can feel okay? And if I did that, would you have energy for yourself? And the parallel in the business world is, if you don't believe in your business, why would anyone invest money in your business? Well, I'm in the business of being me. And when I don't believe in me, why would anyone trust me? It is really important. I say regardless of how much money you pay me, I'm always worth more. So today, if you pay me, it's a discount for what tomorrow's price is going to be. And if I say that in a room of Brits, they're going to go crazy on me. And there's a whole dark part of Twitter of British designers who just hate me because they're like, this guy. But what they haven't done was they haven't actually looked into themselves and asked themselves these questions is taking a big dump on your own identity and your self-worth something that you would want to raise your own children in? But that's the idea. Like you're raising your own inner child in the same way. And in America, I guess we're given this freedom, especially on the coast, maybe not so much in the South, this idea that we celebrate exceptionalism. When someone achieves something great, either through performance, art, business success, we congratulate them. So when they drive a fancy car or they fly in a private jet, we're like, you've freaking done something good in your life to earn this, as long as you haven't scammed or cheated people. But in other places, they would say like, well, isn't it wonderful that this billionaire rides the bus and flies coach? I'm like, why is that wonderful?
Counter signal.
Trying to keep up a certain image that you're one of the people. You are not one of the people. You're one of the richest people in the world. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But they like that and they celebrate that. And then they wonder why a lot of times they're struggling in their business or they're unable to ask for what they're worth. So if you were my client or a prospect and they say, well, it's going to cost this much for this wakame salad. And you're like, I don't want to pay that. I'm like, that's cool. There's lots of places you can go to. I'm not offended. Go wherever you want. Whereas some other cultures are like, well, okay, so how much do you want it for? And what if I added like sake to this? What are you doing? Why would you do that? You're saying to them, I was just kidding about my own self-worth. Because as soon as you disagree, I will meet you there. I will concede. And I don't understand that.
Or worse, I was seeing what I could get away with.
Yeah. Like you were trying to cheat somebody, right?
So then you lack that trust. How do you manage your own expectations with respects to where you begin to taper off on that journey? So you say like, today I'm worth this, tomorrow I'm going to be worth more, tomorrow I'm going to be worth more. You run the risk of instilling in yourself a sense of expectation that at one point or another you won't be able to meet. So
I don't believe that though.
You don't believe that?
No, I just said literally there's no amount of money you could pay me that I don't think I would earn or deserve. And eventually I will be worth even more than that. I don't want to put my own limitations on what it is I'm worth or how much love I can. Like, for example, you're in a relationship, you're like, well, there's a finite amount of how much I could love you. And you would not want to say that, no, not to anyone that you love or care about, to your parents, to your partner, to your children. So why do you then say internally like, oh, I'm only worth this much? No, I have infinite love. I have infinite capacity to earn more. And if someone doesn't see that, that means I just have some work to do. So I learned this idea from Marshall Rosenberg, who wrote the book, Nonviolent Communication. I think it is a term he coined. He's since passed away. He has this beautiful expression that when we ask people to do something, we should ask with this condition. Like, could you take me to the airport, but only do so if it gives you joy? So we give them an out. We're saying that if it doesn't fill your heart with joy, it's totally okay to say no. So it doesn't create any kind of pressure for them to say, ooh, I'm obligated to take you to the airport, right? So if I were still in the service business, I would literally say now, we would only accept your money if it would give you joy to hire us. Only under that condition. And if you see more value than what you pay, we'll take on the job. If you don't, we're not the right people for you. And so every person who wants to negotiate with me, the way it begins is, this is the price. Only if it gives you joy. That's what I'm saying in my mind. And if you don't see that, I'm okay with that. I'm just not your person this time. What they don't realize is my rates only go that way. It only trends upward. It's not, why would I ever go back and say, well, today it's like $5,000? It's not. I have other things to do with my life.
And do you take that same philosophy when you're on the other end of the stick? So like if you're a consumer in some, like you only engage people that it will give you joy to engage in?
Well, if you really think about it, if you are aware of your own emotions and you feel really weird about a transaction, you should stop yourself.
How important is it for you to seize moments?
Well, if you're with my belief that we've got this one life to live on this singular timeline, that the past is memory and the future is imagination, you just have this moment. And so we get to make these decisions. And I know it's a cliche, but I'd rather much regret the things I did versus the things I did not do. And so I'm more likely to say yes to almost all kinds of things. It does get me into some kind of trouble, but I think like your life would be richer if you just weren't so afraid of everything.
Final question. Of anybody alive today, whose last meal would you like to know?
I would like to know my father's last meal because he's getting up there in age. He's not as able-bodied as he used to be, and I would like to like know what it is that's important to him. And so I think of the people I deeply care about just because of his age. I'm starting to think about, shoot, in practicality, he would probably be the first one to go. And so I've not had to deal with a lot of personal loss in terms of family members, so I'm not sure how I'm going to process all of that.
It's hard to know before it ever happens how you're going to take that
Yeah.
on. Fantastic answer. Christo, thank you for being on Last Meal. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
I admire Chris's appreciation of aesthetics and authenticity as much as I do the comfort he finds in contrast. His confidence, whether instinctive or learned, indicates a sense of peace with the self that I think we all strive for on some level. And that's all from me.